So we just watched a video where an act of injustice occurred. There are different roles that a person can fill in this situation. There are allies, targets, perpetrators, and bystanders. Before we get into identifying which characters filled which roles in this video, I want to say that people are complex and they move in and out of these roles depending on their behavior and the situation that they're in. So, for example, you may stand up for your sister at a family dinner when your dad's being unfair, but you may stay silent if you witness an injustice in public. So you can take out your charts, your character tracking charts, and kind of fill in what the definitions are as we go through them. So allies are people who stand up for someone when they face an injustice. They intervene when someone is mistreated, and they don't stand by and watch. While a target is someone who is the target of the injustice. A perpetrator is a person or a group that commits the injustice, and the bystander is the observer, someone who does nothing to intervene and nothing to stop the injustice. Do you have any questions on what those definitions mean?
No, so far.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. So in the video that we watched, who would you say is the target?
The target would be the black man that comes onto the bus with the annual pass.
Okay. And so why do you say that he's the target? Like, who's the perpetrator who is targeting this person?
The perpetrator is the man that's sitting behind him. He starts verbally berating him, accusing him of not having a pass and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So who in this situation would be the bystanders?
What I saw was these two boys, and they looked unsteady in their seats, but they didn't really say anything. They didn't get involved. They just kind of watched what was going on.
Yeah. So they clearly saw what was happening, but didn't step in. So yes, that would be a bystander. And then in this situation, who would be the ally?
I'd say the man sitting across from them that kind of stepped in and told the perpetrator to just stop, and he was being unnecessary and and he was also the guy who made the bus driver drive away at the end.
Yeah. So would you say that who would you say the bus driver would be in this situation?
I'd say an ally.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere between. She doesn't really step in, but she goes along with what the other ally is wanting to do.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So she's
could be an example of a group of allies that you were saying before.
Good. Okay. So now that you guys have a grasp on what these terms mean, I want you to go back into the homework that I had you read last night, the article. I want you guys to talk together and come up with who fills which roles in that story, and then come back to me with evidence from that article that supports your answers. Okay, so you guys can get into a group and we can reconvene in a minute.
Okay.
So this was On Cracking White Society by James Farmer, and it explains how the Committee of Racial Equality successfully integrated the Jack Sprat Coffee House in Chicago in 1941. Kira, can you tell us who the target was and who the perpetrators were?
So the target was the Committee of Racial Equality, the people who came in groups of people of color and would sit down and basically challenge the store owners.
Okay, so that's definitely true. How were they targeted? What was the situation? What was the injustice?
Yeah. So they would come in and sit down in that coffee shop or whatever it was, and the store owners wouldn't serve them any food or anything, and they would just ask them to leave while they would serve white customers.
And you said the perpetrators were who?
The store owners.
The store owners, okay. And Kayla, can you talk about who the allies and the bystanders were in this situation?
Yes. So the allies would be the first allies that I noticed were the Other customers that kind of in solidarity just refused to eat or finish their meal so that other customers could sit because until the restaurant or coffee shop owners would serve the black people. And then later on in the story, the policemen also act as allies. They're kind of not like very directly or actively being allies, but they like throw them a wink when they say like, oh no, there's nothing we can do, and they're just kind of helping them out.
So are there any instances in this story where it's kind of not clear which role a character is filling?
Well, some of the customers would like come in and like see what was going on and then just leave, so they weren't really helping. They were just kind of like, they weren't being useful to the cause, and like they definitely weren't being allies, but they also weren't like attacking the targets, so they're just kind of
More bystander, I guess. Yeah. And then I guess also with the police, it's hard to tell. It seems like they were allies, but I don't know if they would totally be considered allies.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, well, like we were talking about earlier, our behaviors are kind of what determine what role we play in these kind of situations. So I want you to keep that in mind when you are working on your narrative. So for your final project, you're going to be writing a narrative. You're going to be thinking about a time where you were part of an injustice. You were either a bystander or maybe even a perpetrator in that instance. And I want you to take that story, that experience you had, and I want you to change your role into you being an ally. I want you to think about what behaviors and what actions you would take in order to become an ally in that situation in order for it to change. So do we have any questions about that project?
does it have to be a real experience we had? Or can like we make it up?
So if you're having trouble thinking of an actual experience that happened to you, you can go online and find a story that relates to you in some way. But I want you to kind of explain what it means to you at the end there. Any other questions?